Bulldozers tear into the ground and hit a lake bed packed with hundreds of mammoths. A random parking lot turns out to be the exact resting place of one of the most famous kings in history, and in the middle of a modern jungle project, workers unknowingly uncover an entire lost city hiding just beneath the trees. These are discoveries made during construction that shocked workers. In 2020, construction crews were working on the new Felipe Angeles International Airport north of Mexico City. Keep in mind, this area used to be an ancient lake bed, so as the bulldozers started clearing the ground, they found stuff, and by stuff I mean a massive prehistoric graveyard. They dug up the remains of over 200 mammoths. The sheer number of bones was so high, they had to build a museum right there at the airport to house everything they pulled out of the dirt. Thousands of years ago, the edge of the lake was a giant mud trap, so these massive animals would walk into the shallow water, get stuck, and then eventually die. Along with the mammoths, workers found bones from ancient horses and camels, and what makes this even crazier is that archaeologists found evidence that early humans might have been using the mud to their advantage. They found pits that looked like they were dug specifically to trap these animals. So you have an airport being built over an ancient hunting ground full of extinct animal bones. Pretty much the full scope of human ingenuity and growth all in one place. Back in 2012, a group of researchers decided to look for the lost remains of King Richard III, who died in 1485. History said that he was buried in a church in Lancaster, but that church had been torn down hundreds of years ago. The area was eventually paved over and turned into a social services parking lot. When the excavators broke through the asphalt, they found a skeleton almost immediately. It wasn't just anybody. The spine was severely curved, which matched historical descriptions of the king having scoliosis. The skull showed signs of a brutal death with massive injuries from a halberd or sword. To be 100% sure, scientists tracked down a direct descendant of the king's sister, a furniture maker living in Canada, and used his DNA to confirm the identity. It's one of the most statistically impossible finds in history. For 5 centuries, people were parking their cars over the grave of one of England's most famous historical figures. During a land development farming project in the jungle of Campeche, Mexico, something massive was hiding just under the trees. For a long time, people thought this specific part of the jungle was empty, but a recent survey using LiDAR technology, which uses lasers to see through thick plants, revealed an entire hidden city. They named it Valeriana, and it's not just a few small buildings, it's huge, full of pyramids, plazas, and ball courts where the Maya used to play games. The site is actually the second largest Maya city ever found in the region. Workers and farmers had no idea. They were walking over the ruins of a city where up to 50,000 people would have lived, right in the middle of a tropical forest. Back in 2016, a construction crew was doing routine maintenance on water pipes in a park in Tomares, Spain. While digging a trench, they accidentally hit 19 large clay jars known as amphorae, the kind Romans used for shipping wine and oil. But these weren't holding any of that though. Instead, they were packed to the brim with over 1,300 pounds of mostly bronze Roman coins, some with a thin silver coating, dating from the late 3rd to early 4th century. That's an estimated 200,000 plus coins in total. A ton of them were in near mint condition too. Experts think this massive hoard was buried around 310 as a secret stash during a brutal stretch of civil wars, invasions, and skyrocketing inflation. Hoarding coins like this in industrial-sized jars was not the norm. Usually you'd find a handful in a pot, maybe. The massive amount seems to suggest someone panicked, hid it all, and never made it back, or probably killed off by raiders or rivals. In 2010, workers were building a new road in Dorset when they found a super gnarly mass grave. It contained the skeletons of 51 men. All of them had been executed. The most disturbing part was how they were buried. The bodies were tossed into a heap in a pit, which is standard. I mean, you butcher a whole bunch of people all at once, you usually dig a big hole and throw them in. But even more gruesome in this case is that all their heads were missing. Archaeologists eventually found the skulls piled in a separate stack in the corner of the grave. Analysis of the teeth showed these men were not locals, they were Vikings. They traveled to England to raid. It looks like they were captured by the Anglo-Saxons, stripped of their clothes, and wasted one by one. The cut marks on the neck bones showed that it was a pretty messy affair too, with a lot of the men being hacked from the front rather than the look back. In Redmond, Washington, a crew was working on a project to restore a salmon habitat in the middle of a busy town center. While they were digging, they started pulling up stone tools that looked really old. And when archaeologists arrived, they came across over 4,000 artifacts, including spear points, scrapers, and flakes of stone from when tools were being made. They were roughly 10,000 years old. At the time, the area was a very different place. These people were hunting bison, caribou, and maybe even mammoths as the glaciers from the last ice age were retreating. Finding something this old in the middle of a modern, developed city is extremely rare because most sites like this were destroyed by construction decades ago. These tools were made from a type of volcanic glass that wasn't local to the area either, which tells us these prehistoric hunters were traveling long distances or trading with other groups. Completely changed the timeline of when humans first settled in the Pacific Northwest. Construction projects in Europe often run into leftovers from World War II, but workers in Belgrade found something that stopped the entire city. While digging for a new building, they uncovered a massive German bomb that weighed over 2,000 pounds. And not only was it massive, it was still alive, packed with over 1,300 pounds of high-grade explosives. It was designed to level entire city blocks, and because of the age of the fuse, it was incredibly unstable. One wrong move and boom. Police had to evacuate over 1,000 people from their surrounding neighborhood and shut down several major streets. Military bomb squads had to carefully move the device to a safe location to detonate it. Pretty insane. Even though the war ended over 80 years ago, there are still dangers sitting just a few feet under the sidewalk in a lot of major cities in Europe. In 1982, an excavator operator was digging the foundations for a new shopping center in York, England. Suddenly, he felt his machine hit something metal, so he stopped to check. Well, he'd accidentally struck a 1,200-year-old Anglo-Saxon helmet. The machine dented the metal slightly, but the helmet was almost perfectly preserved because it had been buried in a wood-lined pit that kept the oxygen out. The helmet was made of iron and brass with intricate carvings and a Latin inscription, a prayer for the man wearing it. It's one of only 6 Anglo-Saxon helmets ever found, and it's the best preserved of the bunch. Before this find, most of what we knew about this type of armor came from drawings in old books. So seeing a physical, real-life version was a massive deal for historians. It ended up being the centerpiece of the local museum and remains one of the most important Viking-era finds in the UK. Washington Square Park in New York City is one of the most famous spots in Manhattan, but in 2015, workers doing a water main project found out that the park is literally built on top of the dead. They broke into 2 vaulted brick burial chambers that had been hidden for nearly 200 years. Inside were the skeletal remains of at least 20 people with wooden coffins stacked on top of each other. History shows this area was used as a potter's field, a graveyard for the poor and victims of yellow fever between 1797 and 1825. It's estimated that there are up to 20,000 people buried under the park. Most of the gravestones were removed when it was turned into a park in the mid-1800s, so people forgot exactly where the bodies were. Now, thousands of people walk and sit and play on top of these forgotten catacombs every single day without realizing what's right beneath their feet. And during a construction project in Pennsylvania, workers were clearing land when they found a trench filled with human remains. Fortunately, this wasn't a crime scene though, just a mass grave from the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. Now, during that time, the virus was wiping people out so fast at funeral homes and cemeteries, they just couldn't keep up. So in some towns, the death rate was so high they had to use steam shovels to dig long trenches just to get the bodies underground as quickly as possible to stop the spread of disease. The people in this grave were likely victims who didn't have family left to claim them, or from families too poor to afford a plot. And because of the chaos of the pandemic, a lot of these emergency burial sites were just not properly recorded on city maps. So as the decades went on, the town grew and people eventually forgot the trenches were even there. And that has been the video. I will catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next one.